Surf and River Report.
We're here on the bank of the Santa Clara River to note a monumental landmark, which is the purchase of the McGrath property by the California Coastal Conservancy, the Nature Conservancy, and several other organizations. And we're here today to talk to the chairman of Friends of the Santa Clara River, Ron Bottroff. Ron, can you give us a description of what the Santa Clara River Parkway project is?
Okay, the Santa Clara River Parkway project was an effort started by the State Coastal Conservancy in the late 1990s. It's a very ambitious program. The idea is to acquire a continuous riparian corridor all the way from the Santa Clara estuary to almost Fillmore, about 20 miles upstream. The total acreage in the project is about 6,000 acres. Approximately 2,000 acres of that has been acquired at this point. Our property that Friends of Santa Clara River owns is called the Hedrick Ranch Nature Area. It's 3 miles upstream of Santa Paula, and we were the first acquisition under the River Parkway project in the late 1990s. The most recent acquisition is the McGrath property, about 200 acres, which is about 3 miles upstream of where we're standing.
Ron, how many separate parcels have been purchased by the Coastal Conservancy?
I think it's on the order of 10 parcels, and it covers a little over 2,000 acres, I believe 2,500 acres. And it covers almost, if you add them up, 10 miles of river lineage channel. So actually this is a tremendous start on the project. But of course it's expensive, and it'll take years and years to complete the entire 6,000 acres acquisition.
We're standing close to the Santa Clara River estuary, which is really a marvelous sensitive habitat area, home to a number of endangered species. Can you speak a little bit about what resources you find down here on the estuary?
Well, the estuary is an extremely valuable wetland in the Santa Clara system. It's used by not only birds but fish and amphibians and all kinds of animal life. One of the most important uses for the estuary is for the Southern California steelhead, an endangered fish that's an anadromous fish like salmon that spawns in the estuaries upstream of here, like Sespe Creek, and then goes to the ocean when it's about 8 inches long, acquires most of its growth in the ocean, and then comes back upstream to spawn when it's about 25 inches long, a very large fish. It's endangered, federally endangered. The estuary forms a resting area for the smolts as they go to the ocean, and they spend several months there getting larger and getting more capable of getting used to salt water and getting more capable of surviving in the ocean. So that's one very important species. Of course, there are many, many others. Birds included the brown pelican, the western snowy plover, the least tern, and many others. But the estuary, if you'd come out here on a good day with your binoculars, you could pick up 30 to 40 seabirds on a good day. So it's an incredibly valuable area.
Are there parcels close to the estuary here that are part of the acquisition plan?
Yes, the parcel just across the river from where we're standing here is on the list to be acquired. It's currently in agriculture, and there is an effort underway to get the owner to agree to a sale. The Coastal Conservancy only works with willing sellers. They're not out to condemn anybody's land. They work strictly, they and the Nature Conservancy together are the ones acquiring these properties. They work totally with willing sellers. The Nature Conservancy handles the negotiations, the state with the property owner. The Coastal Conservancy is, of course, supplying the funds. But the Nature Conservancy has the expertise to go through the land acquisition process.
Ron, I read somewhere that there's about 10 miles of river access that's been purchased already, um, and that there's a plan to eventually have trails for public access. Can you tell us about that?
I'm aware of the trail program, and yes, there is a program to get about 10 miles of trail. This would be very exciting. So you could hike from, hopefully someday, all the way from the estuary, approximately where we're standing, to Fillmore. Part of it's a railroad right away, but the county is doing has a number of survey efforts going to lay out the trail.
Do you know what other parcels might be in the loop to be purchased anytime soon?
The only parcel that I'm aware of being worked on right now is the one right across the river from us, which is an agricultural field, which is in the floodplain of the Santa Clara River. And one of the things that the State Coastal Conservancy has been trying to do in this program is acquire floodplain, which is maybe behind levees, and then take out these levees so that this floodplain returns to native habitat, or at least has the potential to do that if you restore it. So this is an important purchase right across the river because it is in the floodplain and would make an excellent property for restoration purposes.
Are there funding mechanisms to continue this process, or is it dependent upon future bond measures or something like that?
I think some of it does depend on future bond measures, but I believe that the Property 4 funds that are coming along may have some funds for this purpose. But yes, it will depend on future bond issues, and it's probably necessary for the state to get into better fiscal condition before we really have a good chance to complete the project. The Santa Clara River watershed is about 1,600 square miles. That's the area that drains into the river. Approximately half of that is in Los Angeles County. And that the part next to the river there, along the channel, is heavily urbanized. The city of Santa Clarita is expected to grow to a population in the neighborhood of 500,000 people by 2035 or so, or 2040. So most of the problems that we've had along the river trying to protect it relate to the LA County portion. And they do not have any, the Coastal Conservancy's authority and jurisdiction does not extend that far inland from the coast. However, there is a small land trust in the area that is working to acquire good wildlife corridor habitat between the Angeles National Forest and the Los Padres Forest. So there's some action up there, but it's nothing like what's going on in Ventura County.
Two of the major drainages that contribute to the Santa Clara River are Sespe Creek and Piru Creek, which together border the Condor Reserve area. So condors also play a strong part in what was a historic wildlife along the Santa Clara area.
Absolutely, that's true. The primary condor habitat in Ventura County is just north of Fillmore, and that's definitely all in the Santa Clara watershed. Condors also have been observed on the Newhall Ranch property in Ventura County, which is a major development now ongoing and hasn't been permitted yet, but it's close to acquiring the critical permits it needs to proceed. This is something that's gone on since the late 1990s. It's 19 square miles and would impact 5 miles of the river, as well as the upland areas where the condor has been observed to feed. So yes, the condor is one of the main species we're concerned about. It's the most famous species along in the watershed, but there are, of course, many, many others.
You also have some non-native species that are probably going to be a gigantic problem for your group and the others that are trying to do restoration projects. Can you speak about that?
Well, yeah, the restoration projects that we've been involved in so far in our property, and everybody has the same problem. is eradication of species like the giant reed. Arundo donax is the scientific name. Giant reed or cane is the common word. There are many others, but it's very expensive to remove and it's a very hardy plant. The problem with this plant is that it absorbs a lot of water out of the ground. It provides very little wildlife habitat. And so it's really kind of it came from the Mediterranean. As you point out, it's not native. And we would like to remove it, if possible, eventually from the entire watershed. But again, it's in the watershed, starting in the upstream near the headwaters. So the river is constantly bringing it down. And even though we've tried to remove it, extensive patches of it in the lower river, it can keep coming back. It's expensive to remove. The number that I've heard recently is about $100,000 an acre to remove Arundo. We've done a lot of it on our property with volunteers, and so it hasn't cost us that much, but it's expensive to get rid of. But it's one of the major efforts going on now along the river to get rid of that kind of species.
Give us a description of some of the threats to the river.
Well, there are many, but the primary one now is overdevelopment in the upper Santa Clara River in the LA County section. Newhall Ranch is the biggest project proposed in Southern California probably ever. This is 19 square miles. It impacts 5 miles of the Santa Clara River. It will be in a neighborhood of 21 to 22,000 homes if completed as planned. It will wipe out major pieces, over 100 acres of native habitat along the river. It will impact over 100 acres of floodplain. It's one of the most damaging projects you could possibly conceive of as far as impacting a natural river. And we still like to call this river mostly natural. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but this is the last watershed in Southern California that's in a large watershed that's in a still semi-natural or mostly natural condition. All the other rivers have been channelized. The LA River is the worst example, Los Angeles River, with concrete banks. Newhall Ranch will channelize about five miles of the river. There's a lot of other development up there, though, and not just this large property, but there's constant development in the Santa Clarita area, numerous projects, and we have to continually comment on environmental impact reports and go to hearings at the Board of Supervisors or by the Army Corps of Engineers to provide our comments and hopefully change the project so that it's less damaging to the river. Other threats are reductions in water quality. Some of this is due to water treatment, but most of those now are being improved to tertiary treatment, which is a whole lot better than it used to be. So that's pretty good water now coming into the river most places. Agricultural runoff is somewhat of a problem. It adds nitrates and phosphates and other nutrients to the river, so that is a remaining problem. The Ventura treatment problem is probably the worst problem we have, city of Ventura, because it discharges into the estuary. It's one of the few areas in coastal California where that's allowed. Most estuaries you cannot discharge into. So the water just sits there in this estuary because the river forms a plug against, in the summer, a sandbar forms across the mouth of the river. So the water just stays there for a long period of time, and the discharge into it therefore collects and just sits. And some of the contaminants in there are metals, zinc, and copper, and so on. And these are not good for species like the steelhead that I mentioned earlier, the Southern California steelhead, which is an federally endangered fish. We have most of the permits and other things we need to move on our property, and probably the adjacent property to us, the Hedrick Ranch Nature Area, which we own and manage, 200 acres, because the Nature Conservancy property right next to us is going to be also restored. However, most of the other property, the remaining 2,500 acres that's been acquired, and the eventual 6,000 acres that might be acquired, all needs restoration planning and restoration funding. I mean, it's one thing to acquire the property. That's quite a cost in itself, but the restoration of the property is another very large expense. This restoration activity is doesn't come cheap, and it will need support again from future bond issues or proposition support.
How do people go about finding you or volunteering to work with your organization?
Well, we have a website, FSCR, that's Friends of Santa Clara River, fscr.org, which gives all the information on how to contact us, as well as all the background on the river and how long, all the things we've been working on, the projects, the threats to the river, and so on.
We'd like to once again thank Ron Bottroff, Chairman of Friends of the Santa Clara River. I'm Alan Sanders for the Surf and River Report here next to the Santa Clara River estuary.
Environmental impacts on our coastal communities have never been greater. From pollution to climate change, coastal communities are at ground zero. The Surf and River Report brings you the latest developments impacting our coastal communities. We'll talk with experts about how environmental pollution, development, and climate change is affecting our coastal and river ecosystems. It's all right here on the Surf and River Report.